kind of scurrying a little bit now. No matter, someone should take some lottery tickets because I never know how many to set up for. Despite the registrations, I'm always using that as my guide, and for whatever reason, I can't get it right. So we're just, it's nice to see a full room of people, and just bear with us as we make sure that everybody has a place to sit. So for those of you, anyone here for the first time today? There's some newbies? Excellent. Great to see you. Welcome. And we hope to see you back again. My name is Marion Goard. I'm a real estate broker. I work primarily with older adults, later in life moves, life transitions, and because of my experiences and the people that I work with, that's how this session has come together. It's clear by the number of people in the room that there's need for information for providing a service like this. I'm happy to be the one that's doing it, and I hope that you find that your time here is put to good use. Just also like to acknowledge that we have a whole bunch of educational partners that help to put these events on. It's their support and their encouragement that make these possible. So I'm just going to let them introduce themselves, starting on the side with Sarah.
Good afternoon, my name is Sarah Suddix. I am a funeral director with Smith's Funeral Home, and my specialty is helping families plan ahead. And then I also help afterwards with things like Canada Pension, and Executor checklists and death certificates and all of that things. So I'm more than happy to be here to help if anyone has any questions or wants some more information. I'm here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Kim Rutledge, and I am the sales and marketing consultant for Vistamere Retirement Residence in South Oakville. And my specialty is working with seniors and families, helping them navigate through decision-making, whether proactive or reactive, into retirement living. We're a small community feel in South Oakville, which is a new gem, with 94 suites ranging from studios to 2 bedrooms. And today I have an open house invitation for all of you to come and see me on the 30th of July. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kelly. My colleague Jennifer and I are part of Compassionate Care Collaborators. We are end-of-life doulas or navigators. So anything to do with end of life, whether you're planning ahead, whether you're caregiving for somebody at the end of life, whether you've received a terminal diagnosis yourself, we can help with all the non-medical, non-legal aspects of that. So the spiritual side, the logistical side, the emotional side. So we have some information pamphlets up here if you're curious, and we look forward to talking with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Nastis-McGill, and I'm a registered nurse with VITA, and we've done a recent brand change. We used to be known as Bayshore Home Healthcare. We are the private side of healthcare, and we paired with VITA to provide you a forum of aging in place. And we, as well as our healthcare services that we do offer, we've also offer home maintenance, lawn, and snow removal, home repairs, those kind of things as well to assist you. And it's kind of a one-stop shop to branch off between your healthcare needs, personal support needs, and all of your home aging in place needs. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Meredith Joachim. I am a hearing instrument specialist just up around the corner off of Maple Avenue in the IDA Pharmacy Plaza. We offer free hearing tests for anybody in this room and anybody over the age of 50. We also do wax removals, repairs, hearing aid sales, anything to do with your ears. If you have any questions, please come find me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Judy Rickey, and I am the owner of Clutter Relief Services. We specialize in helping seniors and their families with the overwhelm of dealing with clutter, downsizing, and clearing estates. And if you don't know where your will is or your financial papers, we can help you with that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peter Curtis. I'm a paralegal, notary public, and commissioner of oaths from Guelph. I do medical law. I've been involved in medical law for about 25 years. What we do is we help people with medical issues get classified as disabled, and then get you money back based on your eligibility of impairment. So if you have a cane, a walker, or a significant hearing issue, even with hearing aids, we can help you out. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Daniel, this is my colleague Nicole. We're with Chartwell Retirement Residence. We have 2 locations here. My lovely colleague works at Martha's Landing, and I work in Chartwell Lakeshore. We have continuum of care. Just kind of echo what Kim said, we just help families and their loved ones navigate retirement living.
Good afternoon, my name is Jeanette Bach, and I am an elder care planner. My company name is Fluid Senior Transitions, and what I do is I help you to navigate the hospital system if you're in a crisis situation. Also help you plan ahead. I call it advanced healthcare planning, and help you to put a plan together so you and your loved ones feel a little bit more comfortable about the road ahead, as well as I then do also transitions. So that's transitioning from your home or a condo into retirement living, and help you along the way with all the supports that you need.
Great, thanks very much, everybody. You would be in good hands. If you need any of their services, you would be in good hands. That's why they're here. And I can assure you that they are all focused on your best interest and not their own, and again, that's why they're part of this team. There are some others that weren't able to make it today. Their information is on the sheets that you've got. Everyone's information is on the sheets. So you never know when you're going to need somebody, perhaps not today, but I just ask that you keep that information and let us be your first line of defense should the need arise. Just wanted to also thank Lisa and Ida. They're always the ones that are helping us to get organized today, keep things going, and keep me on time, so thanks very much, ladies. And before we get started, I just wanted a couple of announcements. So I am going to be hosting a couple additional sessions. One of them is going to be in October, prior to the elections. So the Burlington mayoral candidates have all agreed to meet with us. It will be here in October, on the 7th of October, same time. It's a Wednesday. It's not replacing the October session. We've got, actually didn't want to take that away. We're going to be talking about Maine, so that's an important topic. But the October one will be for if you want to get to meet the mayoral candidates and learn more about what they feel about senior issues. If you have particular senior issues that you would like to have them address, I just ask that you note that on the evaluation form that's on the handout today, and we're looking forward to that. So I expect that we will have a full house. You've got first dibs on that information. You can register with Ida and Lisa today. They've got a sign-up sheet. You can email me. That information will be on the website shortly. As well, in August, next month, the presentation is on housing. So that will be my presentation. We're going to just have a big kind of overview of what the housing options are, but there'll also be follow-up sessions for anyone who's interested to get more detail on reverse mortgages and financing options for seniors, as well as information about accessory dwellings, because there's lots of opportunity and lots of potential and change in the legislation. There was a legislation around accessory dwellings that's from a couple of years ago, but there's opportunity in Burlington and in our communities to increase sort of the housing stock through those channels. So those would be separate sessions. We still will have the August session, we still will have the October sessions, but these are in addition to. So again, you have the opportunity, if you're interested in those, to sign up with Ida and Lisa after and or on the website. Just again, before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. Everybody in the back can hear fine? We're good? Yep. Okay. Please just note your questions that you have for our presenter, and we'll have a more thorough discussion after she's finished her presentation. And that way everyone will hear and everyone will be able to participate. The rest here is also explanatory. So, today's session, we have Carey Abma with us. So Carey has been with us for several months now. She's been one of our educational partners, and we appreciate her being here. And her presentation is on, I have the wrong things on my notes. She's on organizing your affairs. So Carey brings over 13 years of dedicated experience to the estate and trust field, a career path that began not by design, but by calling. After experiencing loss and grief firsthand at a young age, she later found herself immersed in the practical realities of estate administration and recognized the opportunity to really make a difference, to ease the burden on families navigating one of life's most difficult transitions. That realization set the course for a career built on both expertise and empathy. Carey earned her Certificate of Estate and Trust Administration and the Trust and Estate Practitioner designation through the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, and honed her craft working with high net worth families at a leading trust company. Driven by a deeper sense of purpose, she shifted her focus to serving everyday families and ones who need support most often but can't access it, taking on executor support and estate administration roles with a technology-driven firm, including acting as executor for families with or without will, or willing or able appointees. In January 2025, on a mission for greater value alignment, Carey took the leap to go into business for herself, building an estate planning practice rooted in the personal, supportive approach she'd always believed families deserved. She also offers professional executor and POA services through a company called Financial Concierge, and she's a member of the Estate Planning Council of Canada. Her commitment to helping others extends beyond estate-related matters. She's the co-author of a book that reframes the narrative around mental health through her own personal journey and gives back to her community as a member of 100 Women Who Care Burlington Giving Circle, which we thank you for. Outside of work, Carey's kept busy and inspired by her soon-to-be 4-year-old daughter, her partner, and 2 stepkids. She's happiest outdoors or with a good book in hand. So we're in good hands with Carey, and we're looking forward to all the information that you have to share with us. Thank you.
All right, bear with me. I don't usually use a mic or a clicker, so I've got 2 hands busy that I'm not used to having. I did some practicing at home. We'll see how I do. If you can't hear me, please raise your hand or wave at me. Again, I'm going to try to keep it close so you can, but let me know how I do. And Lisa has warned me that I need to stay in this area, so I'm going to try to do good with that too. So thank you all for joining today. This room is packed and it's very exciting. I love what I do. It's not the most exciting topic for most people, but for some reason I love it. So I appreciate seeing you all here, and I'm very excited to hopefully give you some tips and some takeaways today that you can use practically to get yourself organized. So Marion just kind of went through this slide, so all I was going to add here is that I'm really kind of on a mission here in the back half of my career to make sure that as many people as I can have plans in place. I've seen what it's like when people don't have a plan in place. It's hard enough when you do, but at least there's things that you can do now to get ready. And that help is available for everyone when the time comes, because it's still a lot of work to settle an estate or manage a loved one's affairs when they no longer can. Okay, so what we'll cover today, so I'm going to go over a few key terms first, just to make sure that I'm not talking gibberish and everyone knows what I'm talking about. Then I've got some stats to share, because I love numbers, I'm a bit of a geek that way. We're going to talk about how to avoid a treasure hunt, which is what we call it in the trust world, when we have to find out all about the person that's no longer here to tell us about themselves. Other information your executor will need, additional things to consider, how to get started, and I do have a slide with a few helpful resources. And Marion, they get the slide deck? Yes, so you'll have that available to you afterwards. And then as Marion mentioned, we'll do a Q&A. I do want to say before we get started that this presentation I have inspired up there, but it's really based on a document that Marion, our very own Marion, created called the 30 Documents You Need Before You Die. So that's kind of what I've based it on. I've added a little bit as I went through, but that's kind of what it's based on, and the link is there because it is on her website if you haven't seen it before. And there's copies here. Okay. So there's some copies here, first come, first serve, and it's also on my presentation and the website. Okay. So some key terms, I've kind of split them up between after death and before death or pre-death. So will, most people are familiar with the term will or last will and testament, and this is the legal document that basically dictates what happens after you die. So I call it the who and the how. Doesn't necessarily tell them the what, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, how to prepare them for the what. The executor or executors or estate trustee, there's different terms for it, are the people or person that you've appointed to take care of things after you pass away. So that's the person that's going to look at the will and wrap everything up for you. Estate planning, this is a term that I find is a little bit out there. People don't really understand what it involves, so I want to talk about that for a second. So I found this on Investopedia. It's the strategic process of organizing and managing your assets and obligations to ensure they're protected and effectively transferred upon your death. So it does things like protect your loved ones, you can minimize taxes and probate fees, and it ensures that your wishes are carried out, and it does even add without court intervention. Now that's not a guarantee. I'm sure Investopedia has some kind of fine print there, but it really does make sure that everything has been thought through. What I recommend is that you talk to your family or your loved ones or whoever you've got in your circle about your wishes and your will before you pass away as well, so everyone is aware of what's going to happen. So a couple of terms around pre-death. So there's two other legal documents that everyone should have, and they're called power of attorney documents. And there's two different types. So the first type is called the power of attorney for property, and that is dealing with your finances. Basically anything that you own or any debts that you have, that person that you appoint in that document is going to manage all of those when you can't anymore. So this is for when you're still living, but you've lost capacity to do these things for yourself. Now, not everyone will need this. It may not need this document, but it's good to have in place. And then there's one for health and medical. It's called the POA for personal care. So two separate documents dealing with two separate things, finances and medical and healthcare decisions. You can have the same person or people for both, or you can have different. Just keep in mind that they do likely need to work closely together to make decisions for you. Attorney or substitute decision maker. So these are different terms you'll hear basically for the people you've appointed in those documents that will make decisions for you. Attorney is a bit confusing because I think a lot of people think of lawyer, but it's just the A in power of attorney. That's the person or the role that's in those documents. And then advanced care directive or advanced care plan or living will, again, there's several terms for this, this document or process, is basically, again, it's the how, the what and the how of your period of time where you may not be capable but you're still alive. And those people need to know what you would like to have happen. How are they going to make the decisions for you? So you need to have conversations, you need to really think through, think about different scenarios. A couple of examples that I like to use are my partner's grandma. She passed away last summer, and one of her big things while she was still able to say was, I need to make sure my eyebrows are on. It was so important to her, and I don't know if anyone would have known that, but so she was able to say. But this is a very simple example, but if you don't communicate these things, if you don't write them down, then people won't know. So I'm going to try to make this a little bit fun. It's not, like I said, it's not the most fun topic. We're going to try to make it a little bit fun. I'm going to try to make it a little interactive. I was inspired by Dr. Belfry last month with her papers, but I couldn't find my paper cutter last night. It's probably buried in my 12-year-old stepdaughter's bedroom somewhere. So anyways, we're just going to do raise of hands when we get there. So this is just for me. I often, when I tell people what I do, so I do estate planning and I do professional executor, and they say, oh, I already have a will, I'm all set. And at first I thought, oh, okay. And then as I started doing it more and more, I thought, well, no, obviously there's more to say here, but what can I catch people with? So I've come up with this question, which is, okay, great, I love hearing that people have a will, but do your appointed representatives know what to do if something were to happen to you tomorrow? are they set up for success? And usually they say, well, I've never really thought about that. I just thought I had a will and I'm all set. So now that you mention it, maybe not. So that's what we're here to do today. So how many people here find estate planning, now that you know a little bit more about it, but even just the topic of wills, powers of attorney, end of life, an uncomfortable topic? Show of hands. Oh, not as many as I thought. I mean, you're here, right? So obviously you're open to it. So I actually conducted a survey earlier this year across Canada of about 150 respondents. And I was really trying to learn more about people's current understanding and perceptions around estate planning, and throw out some of my, how do I get the message across to people effectively that this is important and something they need to do. And one of the questions was, what are the barriers, or why do people not want to talk about it? And 52%, so just over half, say it's an uncomfortable topic. So I'm hoping that I can make it a little more comfortable today, but if not, sorry, not sorry. I can't stress the importance of what we're going to talk about today. So if anyone is uncomfortable, please feel free to take a break. But I mean, we're not going to get too into things, but I just found it interesting, I guess, because for me, as Marion mentioned, from a young age, I was exposed to, passing of loved ones and grief. And so for me, it's just a reality that I've already seen. So, and I've seen the importance of kind of getting organized. So, okay, so some stats for you quickly. So in my survey, I found that only 59% of people have a will, and 61% of those 59 are aged 65 to 75. So that's actually a higher number than I've seen on other studies, which was interesting, but still a lot of people without that, that main significant document that, is going to tell people what to do when you pass away. Only 48% say they have an estate, with 55% of those aged 55 to 64. So what that tells me is people don't really even understand what the word estate means, and they don't know that it applies to them. So lots of opportunity there for me to educate and tell people that actually everyone has an estate, unless you own literally nothing. Whatever you have when you die is your estate. So something will have to be dealt with, basically. And 62 were likely to set up a will or a plan within the next 5 years, with 81% of those aged 55 plus. So that was encouraging. I really was happy when I saw that number, although it could be higher, but there's people who have it on their radar at least, which is great. So a couple more interesting stats. This is from a study that was done by the National Institute on Aging with RBC in 2022. So 74% of Canadians age 55 plus in that survey have a will, which is higher and on the surface seems really great, but only 35% of those have a will that's current or up to date. I did once hear a lawyer say that an outdated will is actually worse than no will, because it's easier just to follow what the government says than to try to figure out what you have in a will that doesn't really apply to your situation anymore. So when you look at the pie chart, we're really only talking about 35% of people that have a current will. So lots of work to do. From there, only 53% of Canadians age 55 plus have one of those POA documents, or maybe both, I don't know, it says have a POA. If you have one, you hopefully have the other. And then only 20% of Canadians have an advanced care plan. So that's the how of what happens when you can't make decisions for yourself. So it's a very, very low number. So hence why I'm here doing what I'm doing, and there's lots of us out there kind of trying to get that number up. Okay, so we're going to pivot a little bit here. Just curious how many in this room have been an executor before? Oh, so quite a lot. Okay. In my study, only 27% had been an executor before. And the reason that I asked this question was because I just was curious. I think that if you haven't been an executor before, it's hard to understand how helpful it can be to be organized. So this shows me that it's going to be hard to get people to understand how important this is if they've never seen it before. Okay, so we're gonna go through a couple of pictures here. Do any of these look familiar? So this, I mean, the computer's a little outdated on this picture, but the idea here is that all of your stuff is digital. So you actually don't have any paper anywhere, it's all on a device of some kind. How many people in this room would say that this is how they organize, this is where all their stuff is? Okay, not a lot. Okay, not surprising. Then we have the filing cabinet, wall of filing cabinets. Anybody want to raise their hand? Looks familiar. So the nice thing about this is that it's very organized, so that's great. But your people, I'm going to call them your people, your representatives, could be your power of attorney, could be your executor, is going to have to go through every drawer, literally every paper, to make sure they don't miss anything. So just keep that in mind. Or maybe a combo. But the idea here is that that's going to be a nightmare, right? That's what we call a treasure hunt right there, okay? And then we have the classic safety deposit box, which I think if anyone wants to raise their hand who has a safety deposit box, it is still fairly common. But the problem with it is that your people might not be able to access what's inside. So you have to set it up properly. And every bank is different, every teller you get is different. So, it's just not the best method because it can cause delays and people can have challenges getting into it. So let's dive in. Let's learn how can we avoid sending our loved ones on a treasure hunt. I didn't have time to make this more estate related, but we're not we're not trying to be pirates and look for the treasure. We're actually want to avoid this kind of maze where we're looking for things. So the 30 documents are divided into 6 categories. So we have the essentials, insurance and retirement, health and medical, ownership, deeds and contracts, financial assets and liabilities, and marriage, divorce, and death. So like I said, not a lot of fun, but we're going to try our best here. Okay, so the essentials, documents number 1 through 8. So I do need to read this because I've memorized the list. Can you guys still hear me okay if I'm kind of sideways? Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay? Okay. So updated, like I said, updated is key. Will, codicils, letter of wishes, memorandums, those are all kind of related. So I'm not going to get into what each one is, but they're all related to the will and what the executor is supposed to do on your death. Trust documents, now those won't apply to everyone. In Canada, trusts are common for folks who have multi-millions and they put their money and assets into a trust. If that applies to you, then make sure your trust document is also available. Oops, sorry. Power of attorney for property, so we talked about that one. That's a very important one to have handy. Contact information for key advisors, so lawyer or lawyers, depending on your affairs, accountant, financial people, very important to have. Passwords for all online accounts. So this one I will talk about for a minute. I think it's probably a pretty hot topic. Or in brackets, I added phone, computer, email. And the reason I added that was because I'm actually starting to kind of go backwards in my thinking about passwords. And at Financial Concierge, where we do the professional executor offering, we're starting to talk about that a little bit more because really your executor or your power of attorneys, your attorneys, shouldn't actually be acting as if they're you. So they really shouldn't be logging in as you. I think, if you have a spouse, maybe you guys, share account information and passwords, not a big deal. But, they say don't share your banking with anyone, don't share your online accounts with anyone. So we're getting away from actually needing passwords from clients. And what's going to happen instead, we need to be able to access their phone, their computer, and their email to know what they have. What subscriptions do they have? What apps are they signed up for? Where do they bank? right? And then from there, we're just gonna contact each provider and tell them, you know, I'm the attorney for so-and-so, they've lost capacity, or they've passed away, what do we do now? And then that's what we do. So we don't actually need the passwords. That's up to everybody on their own to decide what you want to do there. But again, also there's a trust factor there as well. Of course, you want to make sure you trust the people you're putting in these roles. But the other thing to keep in mind is that it should be very clear when they're doing something on your behalf. And if they're logging in somewhere as you, then nobody really knows if it was you or not. So they should be keeping track of what they're doing. And that's going to make it more difficult to kind of tell what they've done. Okay? Last 3 years of tax returns. So we do 3 years because you can kind of see a bit of a pattern. You can see if anything's changed over the last 3 years. And the tax returns are helpful because you're reporting your sources of income. We're gonna know if you have any investments that we haven't found. So it's a great way to kind of see what your current financial situation is. Do you have a disability tax credit certificate that we need to keep in mind, or don't you? And you should have one. Enter Peter. Identification documents. So I have on here birth certificate, your SIN card, your passport. These are things that you don't normally carry with you on a day-to-day basis. They're not going to be in your wallet, or I've heard you shouldn't carry your SIN card in your wallet. Maybe some people do. But anything that's not in your wallet, so someone's going to know, okay, I'm going to check their wallet. But if there's other pieces of ID that aren't there, they need to know where to find them. And another good thing to do is to have copies of all of these IDs, even the ones in your wallet, in case something happens to your wallet, right? And then end-of-life wishes and funeral contracts. So this is really, when I say end-of-life wishes, this is really, you know, you're on your last days. So it's not anything more than that. And then, you know, this is what Sarah does at Smith's Funeral Home, is what do you want those, you know, that to look like? What do you want the arrangements to be? Who do you want us to contact on your death? Who do you want, what kind of service do you want? And prepayment is also an option. And I've heard, I'm sure Sarah can attest, that family members really do appreciate having some of those decisions made in advance so that they don't have to do that at the time. So again, you want them to know that that exists. Insurance and retirement, so numbers 9 through 11. So here we talk about any kind of non-medical related insurance, because that's going to be in the medical section. So life insurance is a big one. You know, loved ones may not know you even have life insurance, and they should know that pretty quickly. A lot of times people will have beneficiaries on that life insurance, and that money can get paid out very quickly. So that's something they want to get on right away. Health insurance, car insurance, they obviously need access to all those things. If you're still living and you're in your home, they need to know when those are gonna renew so they can keep it up and all those things. RSP, RIF, LIRA, LIF, TFSA, those are all retirement type accounts. So that's why they're in this section. And I do recommend having actual account statements so that they can see, and I'll get into this later, but usually a year's worth is helpful. So you can kind of just see what's been happening, what's gone in, what's gone out. And for these in particular, I would say it's also very helpful to have a statement that shows who the beneficiary is and a recent statement. I'm just dealing with a situation right now where I've been dealing with a life insurance company for 6 weeks, waiting for them to confirm to me who the beneficiary is so that I can act accordingly. So that's really helpful to have. And then pension information. So private pensions, government pensions, all of it. This is helpful if you're still alive and someone needs to make sure you keep getting these, updating your address if you move, and then of course when you pass away. Health and medical, so numbers 12 through 18. So this is really going to be more important for your attorney or your substitute decision maker. Obviously, in most cases, this is kind of what they might need while you're alive and they're helping you. So personal and family medical history, very important. Maybe you have adult children and they're the ones who you've named and they know your family history, but it's still really good to have it somewhere so that, in a moment of crisis, they're not trying to remember something that might not come to them. Physician, specialist, medication list, equipment and rental information. So these are all things that you want them to be able to step in and say, okay, suddenly mom is not able to tell me that she has a specialist appointment next month. So these are very important. Health, dental, travel insurance, that's pretty self-explanatory. Power of attorney for personal care. So you may have noticed in the first slide, I said power of attorney for property and not personal care, because it's in this bucket here. Very important. Organ donation registration. So that is, my understanding is it's done through Service Ontario online, and then it's tied to your health card. But it's also a good thing to have a discussion with your loved ones about, so that they know what to expect, that your organs are going to be donated. Living will and advanced care directive, or advanced care directive. So this is that piece I talked about at the very beginning around what are your values around quality of life versus length of life. One good example I like to give is that some people they feel they've worked really hard their whole life, they've built up this net worth, and they want the best care possible until the day that they die. And other people say, you know what, I'm not even all there anymore. I want that money to go to my family, put me in long-term care, government run, and visit me, but I don't need like 24-hour top-notch care per se. So it's each to individual to decide, but that's something that your loved ones might not know your preferences around that, and they may be the ones putting you somewhere, so they need to know where you want to go. And then a DNR owner, so this is pretty self-explanatory as well. Do you want to be resuscitated or not? And people need to know that. Ownership deeds and contracts, so numbers 19 through 23. So house, land, and cemetery deeds, so basically anything that you own that has like an official ownership document, a deed. Some people actually forget, like they own a piece of land on the East Coast. We need to know that. And cemetery plots actually are it's an asset that you own, so it will come with documentation, and it's important that that's known as well. Service contracts, utility statements, rental agreement. So I look at this as though, let's say you're still in your home and you're not able to communicate that you have a cleaning lady that comes once a month on Thursdays at 11. You have snow removal in the winter that you don't need to arrange, it's already automatically going to start, things like that. Utility bills, obviously we want to keep the lights on and heat on. And a rental agreement. So if you're living in a rental, we need to know what the terms of that rental are, what kind of notice do we need to give, how are you paying your rent, and those things. Vehicle ownership, so any kind of vehicle or vehicles that you own, you're going to have a green piece of paper that states that you own it. I've actually been told recently that you shouldn't carry the original. Your original shouldn't be in your car. You should have a photocopy in your car, so I've done that. But the green paper needs to be available. Otherwise, you're going to have to go to Service Ontario. You're going to have to pay to get them to print a new one. So you want to have that somewhere safe. Corporate shareholder partnership agreements. So this may not apply to everyone, but if it does, these are very important documents, so that your representatives know if you have any obligations, what happens if you pass away and you're in a partnership agreement. And then stocks, bonds, brokerage account statements, so any kind of physical paper that represents an asset that you own that someone just may not know otherwise. And then brokerage account statements, so that's just like investments. Again, same as the other ones, you want to have kind of statements available to show what you have. So financial assets and liabilities, 24 through 27. So here we just put in bank statements. So another one where I would recommend kind of having a year's worth, so you can really see what comes in and out, any annual payments, things like that. And for every account that you have, it's good to have. Safety deposit box we talked about. So if you have one or many, where are they? How do I get in them? Keys is a big one. If we don't have keys, it's very hard to get in, and it costs quite a bit to drill a box. And you have to have the proper authority, obviously. And then credit card, mortgage, loans, lines of credit, anything like that. So same idea. If you have assets, we need to know what they are. If you have debts, we need to know what they are so that we can keep on them. Your representative is responsible, whether you're still alive or not, to make sure that you are paying your debts, and that when you pass away that those are cleared. If they don't know about them, they can't take care of them. Okay, marriage, divorce, and death. So numbers 28 through 30, so we're on the last section. Almost there. So marriage, separation, divorce documents. So an original marriage certificate, an original divorce certificate, very good to keep in case they're needed. Obviously any separation documents. This comes into play if you still have obligations. So if you ever were divorced or separated, your executor needs to know that because they need to know if there's any outstanding payments due. Prenuptial, postnuptial, cohabitation agreements, same idea. We need to know if you're in any agreement, any contract with someone where you have obligations or something's owing to you. And then death certificates for anyone in your documents. So let's say you're married, your spouse passes away before you, you've got them as your primary executor, and your adult child is your alternate. Your adult child will need to prove that their parent has passed away because they are alternate. So you need to keep a death certificate for anyone in your documents. Beneficiaries as well, because there's going to need to be proof that I'm not gifting to this person because they're not alive anymore. So you need to have a death certificate. And then of course, if you have a lot of people in your will that have passed away, it's probably time to update it, but you may have one or two and you may not need to do anything, but it's good to keep the documents. Okay, so I'm just going to check my time here. 2:11. Okay, so after that, how many of you are willing to be an executor? Yeah, that's fair. Well, I'm not sure. That's also fair. So in my study, I found that 50% of people are not willing to be an executor and 15 are unsure. So that's 65% of people that might not do it or won't do it. So I found that very interesting. So a little bit more about what your executor might need. This is more kind of information that you wouldn't find on any of those documents that we just listed, but they need it. So when someone passes away, most of the time, your executor needs to go through a process called probate. Who's heard of the term probate? Yeah. A lot of people have heard the term, probably understand it enough to be afraid of it. But basically it's the legal process that your executor has to go through to prove that this is in fact the right document. It is the last will and testament. It's not one you did 3 wills ago. And I'm the executor that these third parties can deal with. So the banks, investment companies, even if you're selling a property, the land registry needs to see probate. They need to know that they're transferring assets to the right person or people. So that the first one on here might look a little odd, but I put it here because it's very important. So when your executor applies for probate, they are basically filling out a legal application, a document that they're attesting to the contents of. And a lot of the information is about the deceased person. And then what they're attesting to is that I am confident that this is the last will of the deceased. So it's very helpful if you have open communication and you've organized your affairs so that they know for sure that this is your last will, and that you didn't, 2 years after this one, go to another lawyer and write a new will. They don't know about that. So they have to be very confident that they have to do their due diligence to make sure that they've located the right document. Your date and place of birth, this one might seem pretty obvious, but if you have someone who you've appointed, because let's say you don't have any family, so it's a friend or a more distant relative, they may not know some of these things. Last occupation, this one's funny because even if you're retired 30 years ago, they still want to know what your last occupation was. Any aliases or alternate names that you might have gone by, no matter if it was 50 years ago, they want to know. Birth parents' dates and places of birth, and mother's maiden name. So those ones I find people get tripped up on as well. So it's great to have all of this in one spot for your executor. And then beneficiary contact information. So this again goes back to the will is, gives you so much information. So it's going to say who, but it doesn't tell the person how to contact those people, and they need to be able to contact those people. So having all those contact information details in one spot, keeping them up to date is very helpful. Okay, so some additional things to consider. So I've mentioned this a couple times. You don't need to keep decades worth of paperwork. You can if you like, but it's helpful to have the most recent stuff all together. And there's Judy right here. She can help you with clearing out some old paperwork. Retention. The only exception there is really your tax returns. Most people know, I think, that 7 years is kind of the period of time that CRA can audit you, so you need to keep that. And that's true even if you're incapable, right? Your power of attorney may need to access a tax return because you may be audited during that time. So your substitute decision maker, executor, needs to know where to find this information and documentation. So getting organized, I think Marion calls it a death dossier on her. Or I've heard lots of fun terms for this, but a binder that has everything in it, or one particular file box, or one filing cabinet, very well marked. The other thing is, and I think I talk about it later, is a digital storage is also an option. You can use something like Google Drive if you want, or there's actual platforms that are set up that are paid, but they're pretty reasonable. And they're going to be double encrypted, and some of them are very clear that they store their data in Canada, so you can do some research on those companies. And the nice thing I like about those is that if you have family that's not close by, so let's say one of your children is in Ontario but 3 hours away, and the other one is across the country, but they need to access some information quickly, then they have the ability to. So you can set it up so that they can access certain information or all of it, whatever you are comfortable with. But then at least they don't have to rush down and 3 hours later they finally arrive, then they have to go to your home and you have to dig through your paperwork in order to produce the power of attorney for personal care, for example. So make sure to keep it up to date. So we talked about the will being up to date. So will, powers of attorney, codicil was a term at the beginning that is basically just a small update to your will. So make sure that you're looking at those documents at least every 5 years. If there's a material change in your life, then that's a good time to look at things again. But if you haven't had anything significant change, every 3 to 5 years, maybe depending on your age, as the older you get, maybe a little bit more frequent, just to make sure that if something happens, it is current. But then again, the documentation can be I would keep about a year's worth of statements and things like that. Safe storage of original documents and passwords. So I do want to touch on this because we are basically talking about copies of everything. So you want to have a copy of the marriage certificate, a copy of the will available, but the originals need to be kept very, very secure and safe, and safe from fire and flooding as well. So some people probably have your documents with your lawyer. That's a thing some lawyers still do. Some lawyers are getting away from doing that. As you can imagine, it's expensive to have space to store all these documents. You can have it in your safety deposit box, but I have mentioned a little bit of a challenge you could face with that. What I recommend is a fireproof safe in your home that you actually do bolt down somewhere so that someone can't just come and swipe the whole thing and figure out how to get into it later. They physically can't move it. And that's where you would store, those original IDs that you don't carry with you on a daily basis, original documents, anything with what we call a wet signature, so a blue pen or black ink signature, something that cannot be replicated, I would put in there. If you want to have your passwords available, what I would recommend is putting them on a list, whether it's handwritten or typed, and have it in that safe as well, so that it's not easily accessible. And also, don't ever put your passwords with your account information in the same place, because that's giving someone the keys to everything. I like to keep those separate. And then I was going to say something else, hopefully it'll come back to me. And then other types of storage, we talked about that. So one of my last slides is just do it while you can. So these numbers are actually quite alarming, quite scary. But basically, people are living longer and our brains are not keeping up with our bodies. So we are living longer, but people are having many more years of life without being actually able to really manage things anymore. So currently there's approximately 772,000 Canadians living with dementia. 2/3 of those are women, and I think that's pretty, we kind of know why. They've got a longer lifespan typically. Over 414 Canadians are newly diagnosed every day, which equates to 17 an hour, which is really scary. And this number is just only going to keep going up and up. 2030, almost a million, and then 2050, over a million. So this is, these stats are from the Alzheimer's Society of Canada. So that's the presentation. I think I went very, very quickly. Hopefully people have questions. But before we do that, I just want to say, pat yourselves on the back. You've taken a first step today by being here. And like I said, I'm very thrilled to see so many people interested in this topic. So it shows that you're committed, that you want to get organized. There was one other thing I wanted to say on this, and that is getting organized for yourself, but also if you're executor for someone else or attorney for someone else, you might want to just send them this link to this presentation and have them get organized as well. Okay, so some tips just to get you started, because you may feel overwhelmed. I'm very cognizant of the fact that my presentations sometimes are overwhelming for people because it's a lot. So hopefully everyone's feeling okay. But here's a couple tips just to make you feel, hopefully it's a little more manageable. So outline a plan. Hopefully maybe you've taken some notes, you're gonna have the presentation later. Figure out what maybe you've done some of the stuff and you can check them off the list. But what haven't you done that you need to maybe tackle? And then outline a bit of a plan so that you have it in front of you, everything you need to do. Then you can break it down into manageable stages. Don't try to do it all at once, it's too much, it's a lot. But I also do recommend that you set a realistic timeline, because this is something that can just keep getting put to the bottom of the to-do list. I myself am guilty. I actually just have gone through a whole update of my own stuff, and I haven't been able to check every box yet, but I can tell you that it feels really good when you've done this work. You do really feel lighter, that you know that if something happens to you, your family is set up for success and it's going to make it a little easier for them, but also that your wishes have been made very clear and that you know that they have everything they need to carry out your wishes. So lots of important stuff when you do this. And then pick an accountability buddy. So I like this one. I came up with myself. And I actually, you'll see, I do offer a service where I kind of help you through all this, and I call myself your accountability buddy. But maybe it's someone you came here with today. Obviously, you have a shared interest in learning about this. Maybe it's someone else in your life that you know wants to do this as well. Or like I mentioned, maybe it's the person that who's named you, and you want to get them organized as well. So here's those helpful resources I mentioned. So I've got a couple of books here, some online tools for advanced care or serious illness planning. And then I'm just going to talk for a minute about the top link, which is Financial Concierge and the Family Playbook. So Financial Concierge is a company that I work with that I offer some of my services through. And one of the services we offer is document organization. And we do that through 2 forms. The Family Playbook is basically a repository for all of the important information that your representatives will need. It is available for purchase. I don't think you can buy it directly from the website, but you can check it out at the link, and then you can email me if you're interested. It is $150 one time. And so it's a great way to kind of know exactly what's needed, and you just pop it into the charts, so it makes it pretty easy. And then we also use one of those digital platforms where we store that as well as all the supporting documents. So that is that's how we do our organizing. And when I'm appointed in someone's documents, they must go through this process so that I am very well set up when the time comes, I can just get started. And we do meet with our clients on a regular basis to make sure things are up to date as well. So this is just a little slide. I'm not going to go into much detail, but you'll have it. It's my estate readiness program that I sell, and I help clients through figuring out, it's basically estate planning, but looking at your estate and basically have you thought of everything? Is everything organized and efficient from a tax perspective? You know, are your wishes practical to be carried out? Because I've seen a lot of estate settlements, so I know how things actually play out after the fact. So that's available, and then I do have an estate readiness checklist that can kind of tell you, okay, should I be thinking more about this, or am I pretty good? So you can email me if you'd like the checklist. I do have a couple paper copies here from the expo. If you don't use email, feel free to come up and get one, but I only have a few. I'm trying to save the trees. But please feel free to email me with any questions, and I do have some chocolates up here, so come see me after if you want a chocolate. And then here's my little postcard, which is also up here, just telling you a little bit more about me and what I do, what services I offer. And that's it. We can open it up for Q&A now, and hopefully people have some questions and we can get a discussion going.
Thank you so much for coming and doing this for us. There's just a couple of questions. Are you like a sole practitioner kind of thing? So like if you die, what happens to our papers and
That's a great question. I get it all the time. So yes, the way it's set up with Financial Concierge, and one of the reasons that I signed up to work with them on some things, is that we have wording in the documents that basically says if something happens to me, because you're naming me personally, then some of the directors of the company can appoint another team member. So you know that all of the concierges are, either TEP, which is my designation, or Certified Executor Advisor designations, and they're through Financial Concierge, by the Better Business Bureau. We get credit checks, all that stuff. So you know that it's somebody that's been vetted and knows what they're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yesterday somebody asked me if I would be their trustee. So I said, I don't know exactly what that means.
Yes.
Get a sheet of paper from the investment company. She doesn't have a will, she doesn't have anything.
Okay.
So I'm really nervous.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm glad you said I don't know, because you want to make sure that you understand the role before.
So what does that mean to you? Can you tell us?
Well, it would depend on the circumstances. A trustee, the term trustee is a very kind of broad term that basically means you're in charge of something for someone else, right? It's a legal term. And you have what's called a fiduciary duty, which basically means you're acting in someone else's best interest, so you're upheld to a higher standard. So you have some serious obligations there, and you need to be careful. And you need to understand what the role is. So, for an example, an executor is technically a trustee because you're acting on someone else's behalf, even if they've passed away. And a power of attorney is also a kind of trustee, right? But there's also trustee of an actual trust. So there's different types of trustees. But you did the right thing by saying, I need more information before I'm going to agree. And there are options out there that if you're not comfortable, nobody ever has to be an executor. So even if you're appointed in someone's document and they pass away, you do not have to take that role. No one's obligated to do that. You can step away. Yep. Okay, so you don't have to agree to be in the documents, but even if you are in the documents and you change your mind, you don't have to do that job. Yeah. So they have to find someone that will, and if they can't find anyone that will, then it will go to the government. But yeah. So yes. And if you have questions, you get some information, feel free to reach out.
I just wanted to clarify, I've done some work on this with my daughter, who's the executor, with her brother, but she's going to be doing the work. And she's now joined on the accounts, and I told her the will is with the lawyer, my investments are with RBC, that's who she needs to contact. And there was something else, another one she had to go. So she's got the contacts, and plus the total with the cemetery plot and everything else in it. So I think I've covered most of my bases.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I would maybe take a look at Marion's document and just go through item by item and just make sure.
Yeah.
The one thing about just having the contact information for, you know, an investment advisor or banker is that they may not be able to access all the information they need quickly. It depends on the bank, it depends on who you're dealing with. So having it already available.
With them.
Pardon?
I've been through with the investment
Okay,
people,
good.
and they know the beneficiary, which is
Good.
her, and
Okay.
how their steps, they know all that.
Good. And it helps too if they know, like maybe they've met your daughter, she's gone
Yep.
in one time, or, you know, if they're familiar with the executor, it might make it a little bit easier when the time comes. Yes. So, yeah, it sounds like you're
I'm progressing.
well organized.
This has been most informative, thank you very much. The one thing you mentioned was your birth parents' dates and places of birth. Well, my in-laws were born in 1900 in Scotland. How much more information do I need?
Yes. So that's something that they'd have to ask the lawyer at the time. Now, if you have a lawyer, like if you've done your documents and you have a lawyer that you could quickly ask the question to, like, I mean, if you can't find it, you can't find it. But if you know it and you can pass it along, then do. I don't know what lawyers do when you don't have it. Like, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, you can still apply. But it does help just to be able to say, like, I know all these things. So.
And as far as for my husband and myself, original documents like birth certificates, is that something other than the little plastic cards that we carry? Is it
That's
something-
it. No, that's as far as I know, that's it for, yeah, it depends on where you were born, right, and when. But whatever you have that, you know, says, you know, where you were born, and then that's.
So that little card is good.
Yeah, the little, I
Okay,
have the
thank
little
you.
card, yeah. There's some of that. Oh, and more.
Should a lawyer have a copy of your birth certificate and all these things, or just the listing of the information?
Good question. So lawyers, you know, they're gonna do, you know, and I'm speaking generally here, every lawyer is different, but in my experience, they're gonna do what they need to do when they're working with you. They're gonna wanna know who you are at the time, but there's no guarantee that they're gonna be the lawyer that's gonna be dealing with your stuff when the time comes. So I don't think that they would want to store all that information in their own files. So when you apply for probate, like a lot of people typically just say, oh, this is the person that made this will, I'm gonna contact them, because who else would they contact? And that's fine. You can use that lawyer, but you can use any lawyer. So if you had a lawyer that you've already worked with, you don't have to go back to that, to the drafting lawyer, it's called. You could use any lawyer. So I don't think lawyers typically are the ones holding this information. Yeah. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just concerned about the estate when I'm gone, because I won't have a say anymore. And I'm concerned about the executor having to step in and do all the work and not get ripped off by people, because a lot of people have large estates. And it's pretty enticing for companies and individuals to take advantage of that.
Can you expand on that a little more? Like, is there a question that I can answer?
Is there some way of an executor seeing an expense account of what you would expect to pay and to who, so that you're not overpaying for something?
And do you mean at the time after you pass away?
Yes.
So your executor is, I'm not sure I fully understand, so let me try and then you can tell me. Your executor is gonna need to know, they're gonna be privy to everything, right? They need to know everything. Are you talking about their compensation, or?
No, I'm talking about the executors doing their thing.
Yep,
They're making all the payments that are required,
yep,
but there could be corporations and individuals out there that will try and take advantage of the fact that it's an estate and take something they shouldn't.
I see.
So I'm trying to protect the executor from getting ripped off by somebody.
Got it, yes, yes. So that's why this is so important, right? Because then your executor, if you're well organized, your executor will know exactly what you owe and what you don't owe, and who you owe to and who you don't owe to. Marion brings up a great point, which is executor insurance. So it's a very specialized type of insurance. There's actually only one provider in all of Canada right now. But it's a special type of insurance that the executor can take out at the beginning of the administration or throughout, but I recommend at the beginning. And they basically assess the risk. If you know everything about the estate, that helps you a lot because there's no question marks. And then they just cover you for anything that you maybe weren't sure of, or something comes your way that you didn't know about, you make a mistake that you didn't intend to, and you're covered. It's an insurance policy. And it basically just covers the length of the estate administration. It's paid annually, and it's quite reasonably priced. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg. It's like 0.1% of the estate value typically, something like that. So that's something that they could put in place. The other thing is they're gonna do what's called a notice to creditors. And so when you apply for probate, once you have your certificate from the court that says, yes, this is the will, you are the executor, then you do what's called a notice to creditors, and the lawyer can help you with that, or you can do it online. And it basically just gives any creditor that wants to raise their hand and say, this person owes us money, can come forward. But you're gonna vet that. And I would recommend, if you have something come forward that they're not sure of, then consult a lawyer and say, I don't recognize this, it's not in my person's affairs, like I don't know where this is coming from, and then they can vet it. Does that help? Yeah? Absolutely. They're responsible to the beneficiary. Ultimately, the executor is responsible to the beneficiaries, so they do need to make sure that they are, checking all the boxes and checking everything out, and not just paying money to whoever says, I want some money. Yeah, and then the beneficiaries are the ones that they're working for, really, in the end. Yes, Meredith has a question. Yeah.
Well, hi. I just have a quick question. What is the passport suffice for all those IDs and all that information you're looking for, like birth certificate?
Yes, can you use the microphone?
Sorry.
That's okay.
No, I'm just wondering whether a passport would help for all those IDs that you're looking at, your date of birth, your place of birth, your parents,
Yes.
or your whatever other information that is required.
Yes, depending on the type of ID, a birth certificate obviously would say your place of birth. But yes, if they were unsure, that's why it's helpful to keep all this stuff in a place where they can access it. If there's something they don't know, maybe they can find it. Yeah. Meredith's gonna come around, I think.
Just a question for you. My 3 children are my executors. Now, 2 of them live out of the province. Does this become tricky? Does it become problematic? Should I think about, one is still in Ontario. How does that work when your kids are not all in Ontario?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I could do a whole presentation on choosing your representatives. This is something I'm quite passionate about, actually, and there's pros and cons to everything. So, first of all, some people would say having 3 is not a good idea, and other people would say it's fine, but you have to think about practically how that's going to work. So even if they were all in Ontario and all local, is it practical? Do they get along? Could there be a situation where they're really not going to be able to agree on something? And that's where they're going to need help, and that's going to be in the form of lawyers. So that's just for number one. So some lawyers will even say, like, you have to pick one person. I don't know that I agree with that necessarily, because it doesn't apply to everyone, but it is more practical, right, to have just one person for decision making. To your question about different provinces, I mean, again, logistically, if they're not all here, but also all 3 of them aren't going to be doing everything together, right? Because that's also not practical. The thing is, they all will need to sign off on everything. So executors need to act together. So one executor can't go off and do something else. Everyone will need to sign everything. So that's where it gets a little tricky. Now it's less tricky now with digital signatures, right? So, before COVID, maybe, but most things can be done digitally, as long as they're proper identified and things like that. But, and as long as you have a will. So if you don't have a will, and you have out of province executor, like whoever your children are would be your next of kin, and they live out of province, they're gonna have to post a bond in order to be your executor, and that's quite expensive. If you have a will, it's fine, so as long as they're in Canada. So it's really more from a practical perspective, yeah.
At what point does a DNR go into effect?
Ooh, I don't think that's for me. I'm not sure, I don't.
And the reason I'm asking
Yes.
is that if I happen to go home today and I, without my wife with me, but if I was singly in the car and I was in a car accident, I was unconscious, the ambulance comes and gets me, takes me to Joe Brand. They hook me up, but I have a DNR.
Does anyone?
What takes power here?
Yes, we have educational partners who can help us.
Can you use the?
I'm sorry?
Can you use the mic?
I believe it's when your heart stops, because that's what resuscitation involves, is restarting your heart. So if you were in a car accident, but you didn't die, your DNR would not have anything to do with it, right? But your advance directives would. And that's where those become really important is, do you want to be kept on life support? Do you want to be
But if you're
intubated?
unconscious,
That's why you have a POA for personal care.
I think you need to carry your DNR on your person.
Yes,
is
you
what
do.
you're saying.
You have
That's
to
what
carry
you
it
need.
with you, yeah.
So you will be resuscitated despite the fact you have a DNR throughout the public spaces.
Can you give her the
And you
mic?
don't have it on you.
Can you please give her the mic, or can you repeat that?
So she's saying that unless you have it on you, like you said, Lisa, they're gonna resuscitate you unless there's something on you saying, don't resuscitate me, right?
Yeah, and there's been discussions of people saying, because they feel so heavily about it, that they'd like to tattoo it on their chest. And I would tattoo it on my chest. However, that is not a legal way of communicating to our EMS personnel or anybody on your behalf. I do know the city of Burlington has pill containers that I've seen. I'm not too sure where you get them from. If it was a program, were they here before? Yeah. Fire or the sack? Okay, yeah, so I'm sure there's some link here, but it's a pill bottle that's kept in your fridge. So if you live alone, then EMS is called, your emergency life press button. They'll look in your fridge, there's a sticker right on your fridge and they'll look for that.
yeah.
But when does the DNR take effect? When somebody knows about it, when you have that advance directive. If you've been pre-hospitalized with your appointments and medical appointments, it will be on your record. They're all electronic medical records once you're in hospital.
Because the hospital's going to take precedent over a DNR, correct?
No, your DNR should be in place at that time, based off of your family medical record.
But they have to know about it.
Can I ask one more? When one has two executors, what is the fee for? How is the fee broken down for that? And what is the fee?
Good question. Okay, so executor compensation is in the legislation. It's different by province. So in Ontario, the maximum that an executor can charge is 5% of the estate. And that's the value of the estate on the day that you die, not including any debts. So it's the gross value of your estate. And if you have two executors, I mean, it's really, I think it's up to them to decide. Maybe one of them is doing the bulk of the work. Maybe they decide to split it 50-50. That's a good thing to have in your will. So if you are in agreement that your executor takes compensation, then I would recommend talking to your lawyer and putting it in your will. Because if it's not in your will, then they have to get the beneficiaries to approve that they be compensated. And so if the beneficiaries don't just say, oh yeah, great, absolutely, then there's going to be a court proceeding to get that approved. It's also taxable income. So some people don't want that and they'd rather not take the compensation. So great point, Sarah, thank you. And you had some questions over here. Can I?
Yeah, did you have one? I think I recall
a few years ago, they changed the rules for the executors, that they were made more responsible for assessing value of assets. Is there some way to email to all of us, maybe, what the rules are for executors?
That is a good question. I don't think there's anything I can email. Basically, it's a due diligence thing, which means, you know, they've done what they need to do to properly determine the value of something. The people that are going to complain about that mostly are the beneficiaries, but also from a tax perspective, that's the thing. So when you apply for probate, you are part of the application is to say that this person had owed this much money worth in assets. So you have to know the values of the assets. And then after you get your certificate, you have 6 months to do what's called an estate information return, which is, I think it's only in Ontario. And it's only, maybe this is what you're referring to, because it's maybe 6 or 8 years old. It's not that old. It hasn't been around that long. And it's basically your opportunity to say, okay, after I got probate, I learned that the value of this asset was actually this, or I learned of a new asset. So it's your opportunity to say, I need to correct the value of the estate. And they want to know, like, because you're paying tax, right? When you apply for probate, there's also a probate fee, and it's 1.5% of the estate value after the first $50,000. So if your estate's under $50,000, you don't owe any probate fees, but after that, it's 1.5%. So they want their share, right? They want to know that you valued everything properly and that they're getting the 1.5%. And then there's also income tax purposes, right? You need to know what the values are, how much it grew in their lifetime, what tax they owe. So there isn't really like a formula. For example, on a real estate property, at a trust company, we're getting formal appraisal because that is the most, that's like the best proof you can have of what the value is. But most lay people, what I call people who aren't doing this for a living, you will use a realtor and get a realtor to give an opinion of value. And usually that's okay. Like, unless the beneficiaries are saying like, what? It's not worth that. Get another opinion, which you could do. You could get 2. Yeah, so just making sure that you're really, you know, getting some proof as well, not just coming up with a number. Yeah. And did I have another question over here in the front? Did you have a question? Yeah.
I was just going to tell you about a situation that was relayed to me by another presenter, I think it was. So the executor finds a will and acts on the will, makes payment to the beneficiary in the will, then discovers another will, a more updated will. And guess what? Beneficiary was changed, and it was too late, and he was liable for that payout.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, so the executor is personally liable for something if they miss something. Now that's where executor insurance may have come in handy. Again, if they did their due diligence and searched wherever reasonably they would search for another will and they didn't find it, then they may be okay. But if they didn't, if they just found a piece of paper and was like, okay, this is the will I'm gonna go with, even though it's 25 years old, then that's on them. So yeah, it happens, yeah. And it's scary, it's a bit scary, right? So that's why, you know, telling them that this is my last will and this is where it is, then you don't have to worry about that. Yeah. Yes, and destroy old ones. That's a really good example, a really good point too. Once you have a new will, you don't need the old one. You don't need it, yeah. Yeah. Yes?
If you don't want to assign your children as executors, you don't want them to have to go through all the problems of being executors of your will. I understand there are businesses that will provide executor services. What do you think of them?
Well, I'm a little biased. That's part of what I do for a living, so I'm a little biased. I mean, I've technically been acting as a professional executor for my career, and I think it's a great thing, to be honest. The reason that Financial Concierge was founded in the first place was with solo agers in mind. And so basically, you know, the founder saw gaps in support for people who were aging alone. But I find all the time clients who are not aging alone, who have children, who still really want an impartial third party to be in that role. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually, in a lot of situations, it makes a lot of sense. You know, you can have, the other thing is, you know, people say, well, that sounds really expensive, but it depends. So I'll go over a couple options. Do I still have a few minutes? Do we know? Okay. So there's trust companies, and there's several out there. Every bank, every major bank has a trust arm to it. They each have their own fee schedule. Usually it's fairly complicated. It's sliding scale. It's different if you own assets with them. Like, it's very complicated. Some lawyers will do it. Depends, you know, some do and some don't, so you kind of have to do your research. And then there are more people popping up like me who have the experience. We're not lawyers, but you don't have to be a lawyer to do the job, right? Anyone can actually do the job. But we've been doing it for years, so we know how to do it, and we're impartial. So that's a huge thing. So another duty of an executor and your representative is to act in your best interest and or the beneficiary's best interest equally across the board. So let's say you have 5 beneficiaries and you're estranged from one of them. Well, too bad. They're one of the beneficiaries and you have to treat them the same as everybody else. So that can be tricky. And every family is different. That's the other thing. So you have to think about, for you, what makes sense. Are your kids going to be mad? Are they going to be upset? Maybe. But in the end, it's a lot of work. Even if the family dynamics are okay or great, it's still a lot of work, not to mention if there's going to be some family dynamics issues. So, for example, we charge 3% of the estate. So when you think about that, if you name someone who doesn't know what they're doing, they can technically charge up to 5%, as long as beneficiaries agree, or you agree with them in advance, or you can hire someone who knows what they're doing and pay them 3%. Or, you know, it ranges, right? You're probably not going to find someone who does it for much less than 3%, so between 3 and 5%, probably what you're looking at for a professional. Yeah.
If your house is a large part of your estate and it was purchased, say, in the 70s, does that hold it closer to my mouth? I'm sorry. If your house is going to be a large part of your estate and you purchased it in the 70s, does that have to go through probate?
Ooh, it's like I planted you, because that's a really, actually, not a lot of people would think to ask that, and the answer is it depends. So, and yeah, Marion, you know about the first dealings exemption, yeah. So there are some properties, depending on when they were purchased, that fall under what's called a first dealings exemption, which basically means it wasn't transferred to the new system when they did that whole mass transfer, and it's like you've never transferred it before. So in that case, you don't need probate. So what I recommend is getting a real estate lawyer to just search your PIN, and they'll be able to tell you whether you qualify for that or not. And then based on that, you may want to, organize things a little differently. Because if you can totally bypass probate, another thing, this is quite technical, but I've seen it before. The house didn't require probate, but once it was sold and the funds were put in the estate account, the bank required probate. So in Ontario, you can do what's called a secondary will, and anything that's not probatable. So private company shares is usually why people would do a secondary will. Or if you have a really significant art collection or jewelry, something that's really significant in value, you can put it in a secondary will and it doesn't require probate. So to think of it like assets that don't need probate are assets that you can sell without needing to go through a third-party institution of some kind, if that helps.
So a question in a very simple way. If you're a person who does not have any children, but you have nieces and nephews who will look after your stuff, but you know there's going to be problems down the road. So I get you to look after everything. So I'm lying in hospital, I have to pull the plug. So who has the the upper hand there? Would it be you, or would the kids come forward and say, no, you can't do that to my aunt, and blah, blah, blah?
You guys have great questions. This is great. Okay, so just to clarify, you're still alive, but a decision needs to be made. Okay. So this goes into a whole other aspect of things where if you're, whoever you've appointed in the role of your attorney for personal care, say it's me, that's why that advanced care planning, advanced serious illness planning, living will is so important, and a DNR, because, and this would apply to, even if it wasn't me, if it was a family member, if someone is going to question why they're doing what they're doing, they can show you and say, this is what they told me, this is what they wrote down that they wanted, and that's why I'm making this decision. So that's why that planning is so important to do. Otherwise, it's really hard to be able to say, I'm making the best decision that I can based on what I know. And obviously, when I'm doing this professionally, I don't know you like your niece and nephew might, but we've had these conversations and you've documented it.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on my previous question. When you started talking about the percentage you would get to look after an estate, you said it's 3 to 5%. Is that on the gross amount, the net amount, and are there any circumstances where you would go above the 3%?
So that's the gross amount of your estate on the day that you die. So after you pass, there's going to be a calculation of what your estate was worth, and then the fees will be calculated on that. Would we ever go over that? You mean me personally with my services?
Anybody.
Well, so typically you're going to document in writing what the agreement is around the fees. So we have an agreement that states what our fees are, and again, that goes right in your will so that nobody can question what fees are being taken. And again, that's what I would recommend. If you have a family member, you're going to have them do it, put it in your will. I allow this person to take compensation, and we've agreed that it's going to be 3%. Or you don't say anything, then they can take up to 5%. Yeah, so I would document.
If I appoint my sons as executors, and then they decide after my death that they're finding it really, really difficult to do this job, can they contact someone like you to get help?
Great question as well. So yes, there are people like me, also I do it too, but it's called agent for executor. So it's basically, you can hire me or somebody else that provides the service to support you through the job, or kids can decide to support through the job. So what I recommend for my clients, if they have a family member, but either they're not really sure if they want them to have the burden, but they feel bad not putting them in, then put them as for primary, and then put me as alternate. And then when the time comes, they can decide, okay, you know what, I do feel okay to do this job, so I'm okay, or I need some support, or you know what, I'm just not in a position to take it on at all, and then I can just step in. So that's what I typically recommend. But yes, there is help for people who want to be in the role. It is a bit of an honor. You want to honor your wishes of your loved one, but it's a lot of work. So yes, there are support services out there. Yeah. So I just want to say one thing. None of this was legal advice, okay? Just to be clear about that. Okay, I'm not a lawyer. I said that right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the engagement and the
Thanks, Carey. It's always helpful to get up-to-date information and to get a refresher on this topic. For anybody that's also interested, Carey's done a great presentation. We did have a presentation several years ago by Debbie Stanley. She's with another company that's similar. If you wanted just to get a different take on this subject, then look back through the past events tab on the website, and you'll be able to reference the presentation that she had then as well. So again, you've covered much the same, but some different takes on some of the information. Okay, where's the clicker? So this is a slide that comes up on every one of our presentations, Plan for the Future. We heard that loud and clear today. Thank you for helping us to get organized and find a way to do that. recorded, it will be available on the website. I will send a link to you with a video replay. Be patient with me as I have to get my way through all these emails and get it out to you in a timely manner and all the reminders. I hope that you are all getting my emails. Again, if you're not, please let me know because it's gone into cyberspace somewhere. But it's important that we stay connected so I have a good idea of who's coming to be able to plan for the next time. Thanks again to our educational partners. They're all here. Take the time to meet them, spend some time chatting with them, let them know who you are and learn what they're about. Also, we have VIDA has the registration forms for the next, not for the August session, but for the mini sessions. Those mini sessions are space controlled, smaller crowd there, so it's just important that if you're interested in those, that you register as soon as possible, and then also the October session with the mayoral. And then once again, thanks so very much for being here, and look forward to seeing you next month. Drive home safely.